Hello and welcome back to the Fish and Chip podcast. I'm your host Fish.
And I'm your host Chips. And on this episode of the podcast, we're going to be discussing season 3 and 4 of The 100. So, we also did a video on season 1 and 2 of The 100, which released a few days ago. So, if you want to watch that first, just click out and then come back right here. So, season 3, I give up the synopsis of what we've been left off with. So, we get introduced in episode 1 with basically it being 3 months, was it?
I think it's 3 months, something like that. There's a gap of a couple months anyway.
There was
between season 2 and 3.
Well, there was a 3 month gap between the events of season 2, where the mountain got destroyed, overrun, and all the mountain men were killed. So basically, One Hader is nowhere to seen for those past 3 months.
Yeah.
And
which is Clark.
Clark. Well,
yeah.
Sorry, Clark. Clark, who's
now known as One
Hader. Which is actually the episode title of is the first episode title of the season, and I guess we also start off with the beginning of what John's been doing as well. That was the first thing we were introduced to. So we'll be going to John right away because I feel we don't really need to explain the season that much. Everyone's kind of seen it. So basically we're going to go. Basically, we start off with John in the he's in the basement kind of thing.
It's in the lighthouse.
In the lighthouse.
Yeah. He's trapped in the lighthouse. We've been stuck there for 3 months because at the end of season 2 he gets stuck in there when the place gets shut down and all the blast doors get locked. Yeah. And he gets stuck in there after him and Jaha break up. They go their separate ways because Jaha wants to do. I can't remember what his plan. Why they broke. Why they eventually
separated.
Because Jaha sacrificed one of the people that John and Jaha went with.
Yeah.
He throws him off the boat and lets him die essentially.
And the reason they were separated at the start, by the end of that season 2, was because John was injured.
Yeah.
And the whole thing was Jaha was taking any sacrifice.
Yeah, he was everyone that had went on the journey with them had died at this point except for John and Jaha. So Jaha just left John behind and finds the house, and he finds what's her name again? I know her name
Ali.
is Ali. Yeah, her original name was Becky, but Ali is
is the AI.
Yeah, she's an AI that was created from Becky's consciousness, who was the whole reason that the nuclear apocalypse happened 97 years ago. That's kind of more stuff that you find out about in the second half of the season. So, because at this point, all you know is that Jaha has changed in some way. He seems almost like out of it. He's
he seems like a different person. Which is one way of putting what the device does to you.
Yeah.
But the story of Ali in the first half of season 3 was a side story.
Yeah,
it was
the story in
Camp Jaha. The main story in Camp Jaha, which was Camp Jaha, which was the whole thing with the Ice Nation rebelling against the 13 clans.
Yeah,
the now 13 clans.
That's kind of more stuff that's happening in the capital. The stuff that's kind of happening in Camp Jaha, 'cause we'll move on to our next talking point, is that at the time Abby and Kane are kind of fighting over power. There's a bit of a power struggle. It's not an all-out war or anything, and they don't hate each other. It's just that they both have different ideas about how things should be run. So Kane wants to integrate more with the other clans and become the 13th clan essentially. Whereas in Abby kind of has an isolationist policy where she kind of wants to look after her own people first and then worry about the grounders afterwards. And that causes tension between the two groups, which eventually leads to Pike, who's a new character this season.
Yeah, so he gets introduced. He was actually he was a teacher on the Ark.
I think he was in season 1 or 2, wasn't he? He was in one episode.
No, he wasn't.
Was he?
No, they did flashback. Remember?
Oh yeah,
they did a flashback of him, but he gets introduced in season 3 as part of the farm station on the Ark.
Yeah,
and basically what their deal was for the whole season, for the whole of season 2, because they landed on Earth like everyone else, but they got scattered from the other people in the Ark. And basically, remember, Clark chose to prioritize the mountain over finding them at the time.
Yeah.
So now they finally found, and we find that they had a bigger struggle than anyone had.
They were attacked by the Ice Nation, and a lot of people were killed, which is kind of so.
The majority of them.
The majority of them were killed, which has kind of radicalized the survivors.
Yeah.
So this has also kind of happened around the same time that Bellamy, a person that he helped in season 2, Echo, who was like a person that he met in the prison in Mount Weather. He trusts her when he shouldn't, and it inadvertently ends up with Mount Weather and a load of the 100 and Sky People being killed, because Mount Weather is blown up by Echo because she like helps an assassin from the Ice Nation get in to like blow up the place.
It wasn't her who blew it up, but it was in Bellamy's eyes. It was
her fault. She
fault.
betrayed Bellamy.
It was
for it to happen.
It was Bellamy's. It was because Bellamy had faith in her and led off with her.
Yeah.
While Lieutenant Emerson infiltrated the mountain.
Yeah. Well, he's not the person that actually uses the code. He's just the person that gives because the assassin is killed in the.
Oh yeah, he gave away the code. Yeah, he
the
didn't actually do
killed,
it.
Yeah.
I forgot he didn't do it himself. But It was his knowledge.
But that also
Intel.
that radicalizes his intel, with the code, like that radicalizes Bellamy though as well. And Bellamy and Pike team up essentially to like overthrow the leadership of the Ark. So essentially they get elected in, so now Pike is Chancellor. And because of that, a lot of kind of bad stuff happens.
That brings in Bellamy's biggest story of the season was him basically annihilating the whole of the Grounders.
Yeah, their army.
When they did not pick up arms against them at all.
Yeah.
You know.
It's a betrayal of not only the Grounders but also Bellamy's sister Octavia, because she's obviously like she's in a relationship with Lincoln and she has almost like become a fostered Grounder in terms of like she's almost more like one of them than she is one of the Sky People. So that's a betrayal of her, which kind of before we get into, because some stuff happens then with an important character death, we'll kind of go backwards but also sideways at the same time. Talk about Clark's story in this season. So Clark begins off the season with having not seen anyone from the Ark for 3 months. So she stays away from everyone because of the decision she makes at the end of season 2. She feels like she isn't worthy of leading people anymore because she sees herself as a murderer, like, and that's why she gets the name Wanheda, which is the commander of death, because she made that decision to wipe out all of the mountain people. So at the start of the season, she gets captured by Prince Rowan, who is basically on a mission to redeem his name because of something that happened in his past, because he wants, like, he was supposed to be the future king of the Ice Nation, but he instead, or the future leader of the Ice Nation,
but he went rogue or something.
He went like I think he did something that his mother, because his mother's a bitch.
Yeah,
his mother did not like. His mother is like, she's not in many episodes this season, but she's kind of like one of the first bad guys in this season. She ends up getting killed by Lexa, because Lexa gets reintroduced into the show after Prince Rowan brings Clark to the capital. What's the capital called again?
I think it's mostly called the capital.
Yeah, it has a name, but I can't remember what it is. It doesn't really matter anyway. So he ends up bringing her back there, and Lexa gets reintroduced, and she straight away apologizes to Clark for what she did for betraying her, and she says that to make amends that she wants to make the Sky People the 13 Clan.
Yeah, they're the 13 Clan. Yeah.
Which causes tension between Lexa and her kind of command structure.
But it also encourages the tension that was already coming from the Ice Nation.
Yeah.
And it basically causes a what's it called? Basically, a fight.
Oh yeah, like a fight to the death between Rowan and Lexa.
Basically, they choose the warriors, and Queen of Ice Nation, she was too cowardly to put herself in the ring.
So
against
she Rowan in the ring.
She threw her son Rowan in the ring, and the whole thing was it was actually pretty cool how they got. Basically,
the spear throw, man.
The spear throw to the Queen instead. It was like a whole show. It's like, that that Rowan was one of her. It was just a guard, like, that he had nothing to. He was just doing what she was telling him to do. That it was.
Well, he didn't even want to fight Lexa, because didn't he know Lexa from their childhood or something? So they were friends.
Because the Queen was taking no risk in this fight.
Yeah,
that was the whole deal, and she basically, by killing the Queen, it was like,
she ended the conflict almost in a way, because Rowan became the new leader, and he obviously was like a lot more lenient towards the Sky People because he was friends with Clark at this point. So then that kind of leads into a really contentious point amongst the fan base of the 100, which was Lex's death.
Yeah.
So that was a really significant moment this season, because it was not only like the 100 were losing, the Sky People were losing their connection to the rest of the Grounder tribes, because Lexa was like their biggest champion, but also it was like Clark losing, who at this point was probably the love of her life, like, because she had a relationship with Bellamy, but it wasn't really, or not Bellamy, with Finn, but it wasn't really the same thing, like, and also they'd kind of fallen out of love because of stuff that Finn had done, whereas with Lexa, even though Lexa betrayed Clark, she had never really stopped loving her in that way, and that was like a really significant moment in Clark's development as a character.
But the whole thing was, Lexa was also a safety.
Yeah.
A safety net. She was definitely, Lexa was a safety net for Clark, because the whole thing was she was the leader of the nations, and she had the Nightblood in her. So basically, she could solve conflict a lot easier, and that safety net got killed.
Yeah, exactly.
So basically, the whole thing is people got angry over Lexa dying, but the whole thing was they were just trying to kill off the safety net, which is what Lexa was.
I think
because her character just represented, like something that was, a very easy option. She was it was like a very, let's turn to Lexa when this occurs. Like, you have to, it made sense to kill her off.
I think what people were annoyed about was that, like, she was seen as like a plot point rather than like a character.
Yeah.
I actually thought that the death was like, it served a good purpose, and also it was like, it was not, I wouldn't say a fitting end, but like, I think that the deal, the controversy around it was a lot more like blown out of proportion by people than it should have been, really. Like, it's like many other characters dying in shows, it happens a lot. Like, it's, just like, I know it was a lot of people's favorite character, but it served a purpose in a lot of ways. So
that moves on to the other
another
biggest
death, which was
Lincoln. I was a lot. I was very sad to see the character go.
Yeah.
But the actor, because the actor's really good, like, for Lincoln, and
Ricky Whittle,
the fact that he's actually really good in American Gods is a good TV show. Just a side recommendation to watch it. But Lincoln Dime was a huge thing, because he was like the character that like basically was another connection between the Grounders and the Ark.
Yeah, it was like their only other connection.
Their only other connection. Like, although Lincoln was less influential than Lexa, don't get me wrong, but he was their first connection.
Yeah.
He, like, even though it was torture, it was still a connection.
But he was also like one of their main hopes as well, of like the.
He also basically became part of the Ark. That was the whole thing in that season as well. Is he was wearing the uniform of the people on the Ark.
Yeah, the guards. Him and Bellamy at the start of the season were training the new guards to become guards. Like,
he was. They actually were lead of training, and Pike, because of change in leadership we mentioned earlier, due to Kane and Abigail, not sorting their shit out.
Yeah. Like, Pike couldn't trust Lincoln because Lincoln's a Grounder. It was crap because, man, like, Lincoln was so committed to integrating into the Ark society that he stopped speaking his own language and everything.
His death was suitable to him, though.
It was. Well,
it was a very honourable death, like.
Well, yeah, cause he sacrifices himself so that his friends won't be killed. His Grounder friends.
His his last word to Pike was like "fuck you" or something.
Yeah, something like that. It's like Pike said, "Any final words?" and like, Lincoln was just like, "I have nothing to say to you."
Yeah,
that's fucking like, he's such a good character. I was more sad about him dying than Lexa, because I feel like he had more development and he was there for longer, and I just
but he sacrificed his life in, like, hope of protection.
Yeah.
It was like he was doing it out of honor.
Yeah.
And Pike could respect what Lincoln was doing.
Yeah.
And he saw honor in his action.
That's why he gave him a quick death. He shot him in the head, like. But it was still shitty. That was also, it kind of, because this feeds into the second half of the season, because this was the beginning of Pike's downfall as a leader. Yeah. Because after that, he kind of lost Bellamy support, because Bellamy was captured by Octavia as well, and like.
Well, another part of Pike's downfall was the fact that the unexpected AI.
Yeah, the City of Light. So just
Yeah.
we'll talk about this kind of quickly because we're gonna wrap this section up and move on to season 4. But at the end of the season, or at the second half of the season, then is all about the City of Light.
Yeah.
So the main antagonist of the second half of the season is Ali. She begins to give people this chip which allows them into the City of Light, which is like a digital world that's almost created in your headspace. But the thing that it does is that you essentially become her puppet. Like after that, you essentially become a mindless drone that does any action or order that you want her to, that she wants you to do in the real world. So like even if like your loved one was standing right there and they wouldn't take the chip, if Ali told you to kill that loved one, even if they were like your entire world, you would kill that loved one without, because you're brainwashed essentially. So that was what they were fighting against for.
You kind of see
the
a lot
season
of
afterwards.
that through Monty and his mom, although
Yeah.
we're not going to get into it. That was
No,
the first
basically
game.
Monty kills his mom because she gets chipped, but we're not going to talk about it. So there's a lot of that at the end of the season. So they're kind of fighting against the chip, which kind of leads into towards the end of the season where Clark manages to infiltrate the.
Yeah, she infiltrates the
City of
AI
Light.
by putting by basically taking the Nightblood chip that Lexa had before. But she had to because there was because they had struggled to get a Nightblood, so she had to pump Antari's blood, who
Into herself,
who was the evil bitch who basically died of brain damage because of Ali.
Yeah.
But Nightblood was pumped into her, and it was interesting. We got to see Lexa back again, and in the final fight and stuff. And it brought in the whole into season 4 the idea that the population that the Earth is going to go through radiation for another cycle because of the. And basically only 1% of it is going to be is habitable.
Yeah. It's like Ali's final warning for if you kill the City of Light, you're killing everyone because the world is going to end in 3 months anyway. Which is really significant because it's just after Clark is able to say goodbye to Lexa too, and now she's gotten another, and it's almost like she's feeling our problems are over, and it's leading into the next problem. The next problem, which is trying to find a place that's inhabitable on Earth, or to find solutions so that the 100 and the Grounders and basically humanity can survive, which kind of leads us into season 4.
Yeah.
So a big thing in season 4 is the Sky People and the Grounders trying to find solutions to the incoming nuclear apocalypse.
Yeah.
So a big character to do with finding solutions is Raven. This is kind of her season where she really shines through
because
as
she
a character.
gains a hacker ability as well because of Ali. She does
hacker. Yeah, but she's also just super intelligent anyway.
Yeah.
So she's kind of the one that's in charge of finding solutions. So the first solution that they kind of come up with is there's a water filtration system that they could use to essentially make the Ark inhabitable, to survive throughout this nuclear apocalypse.
Yeah.
So,
and that was Bellamy's decision. This is
to get the water filtration.
No, but he was held with the decision of whether to save the people that got in. Basically, some of the people from Farm Station got basically got enslaved where the filter is, but. Bellamy was held with the decision to sacrifice the water filter, or to sacrifice those people but he ended up sacrificing the water filter to save those people, even though it was the most stupid decision he's ever made.
I think it was because he had been made to make so many decisions where people died that he was he was just sick of it. But then he actually inadvertently ended up killing more people, even though it didn't end up mattering in the end because of Ilian, the idiot. Yeah. So essentially, another thing so at this point now, only 100 people on the Ark can survive. So Raven tasks Clark with making a list of 100 people. So the most useful and suitable 100 people to survive. And that's kind of a whole big thing with Clark because she wants to sacrifice herself, but also she's kind of needed as a leader figure. And also because she has training in medicine because of her mom.
Yeah.
So she is kind of an important person that they need on the Ark to survive.
Yeah.
But it ends up not mattering because Ilian, who is a character introduced at the start of the season, whose family was killed by him because he was forced to do it by Ali. The AI from the last season. Yeah. He ends up hating all technology because of that, and he ends up destroying the Ark like a retard. because he just didn't know any better at the time. In fairness, he didn't know any better at the time, so that really screws up. Like, he essentially kills 100 people by doing that. Like inadvertently, even though he didn't mean to, and his intentions were good, but he ends up doing something stupid. So the next kind of big thing this kind of ties in with the point we're going to make after this, because it's all happening around the same time, because this season is kind of storylines all over the place. Yeah. So it's quite difficult to summarize efficiently. Like you have to kind of go point by point rather than doing it that way. So the next one is the Nightblood. So
Nightbloods, basically the whole thing was with they found out that Luna, who was a Nightblood who denied to take the throne in last season, she could survive the radiation with her blood, and the whole idea was that the whole side story was that maybe they could use her blood as something that would help, put it in everyone so everyone could survive
the radiation. Yeah,
the radiation,
because her blood is like special.
Yeah. And so with that story was kind of a sidetrack for but I think it was more, we mention it now and we will go into other stuff now.
Well, it is just mention something briefly that's kind of in the finale. It does help Clark survive the end of the season because she becomes more immune to radiation, even though it still hurts her. So it's kind of important in that regard. But what ends up becoming like the big thing that's going to save humanity in this season is something that Jah has to do with. So Jah essentially kind of begins because he was at his lowest point at the end of season 3 because of all the stuff he did.
He was basically a villain next to Ali.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, well, he didn't. He was controlled, but
he was controlled, but he was the one that put everything into place. And he had no idea the damage he was causing, but this was his redemption arc, as you put, and the whole thing was he was convinced he could find a bunker to for his people to live in during the next radiation blast. So he ends up going on. He does a few. He goes on a wild goose chase, but some of the trails he took led him into nowhere, and eventually he found it. It's the whole Jah thing of where he goes through a lot of shit and eventually finds it. They kind of went through that thing. It's like the desert all over again.
And the bunker actually ends up being in the capital city of the Grounders as well. Yeah, like in the middle of the city.
Basically, they have a whole Indiana Jones treasure hunting scene.
It actually is kind of like that, in fairness, like putting, like with ancient objects, like putting them into things and like cracking codes and stuff.
I need to get all my good historians to help me in on this.
It was kind of like that.
It was like that. It was like, oh, gotta get the intelligent ones on this mission. Gotta get the old Monty.
Yeah, because Monty's a genius, so even though he hasn't really shown it as much because he's kind of an undeveloped character in the show. But that when they eventually find the bunker, it's decided that the only fair, which is kind of shitty on Jah because he's the person that found it. So in his eyes, it should be finders keepers. I mean.
Yeah.
But in the eyes of the general public, the general people that are left in humanity, it's kind of decided that the best way to decide which group gets to keep the bunker.
But the whole thing is the reason for this. The fight over it was because Clark and Abigail could not discuss who they decided to align with.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing was it was basically King Rowan, Ice Nation, and Indra. What was hers? Tree Crew and Ice Nation did not get along, and the whole thing was Abigail and Clark both made alliances with these groups without discussing with the other, and that basically led to Jah Jah's bunker getting just thrown out into into an all-out basically a battle between
a 13-person battle where essentially every single clan, so the 13 clans including Skycrew, select a champion, and that champion fights against the champions of the other crews, and last person surviving is the like group that gets to take the bunker. So what ends up happening is that in the fight there's people like
Luna.
Luna's in the fights. She's the Nightblood.
There's
She's
so many big names in
so
it.
she's crazily talented, like crazily skilled, fighter.
She like the whole story behind her is that she let Lexa win.
Yeah.
Basically, she ran off and she got banished because of what she did. But she had the right to the throne, which she denied.
And she was the most skilled out of all the Nightbloods the year that Lexa took the throne.
Yeah.
And like as in by a country mile. Like the reason that she quit was because she was responsible for killing most of the other Nightbloods, and she just couldn't take it anymore. So there's her. King Rohan is in the fight. Ilian, that idiot, is in the fight too. Because he puts himself forward as the person for his group. And then the big one, Octavia, is in this fight too. So the fight is kind of going...
Actually, I have to say one thing though about Luna being in the ring. It was
What?
her clan was completely killed off. Remember that? And she was like, "Oh, I'm representing," so no one could go into
the bunker.
to the bunker. I mean, like, even if she did win, everyone's going to overthrow her.
She's gonna get killed straight away.
She's going to get killed, like.
But like her whole point was like she doesn't want humanity to survive because they're not worth saving.
Yeah.
And if they're worth saving, then they have to defeat her to prove that point because she doesn't want to be alive anymore because she's just been through too much. So what kind of ends up happening is that the last so stuff that happens in the fight, Echo ends up killing a couple of people who's like she's like King Rohan's right hand, who's the person that also betrayed Bellamy earlier on, and then she ends up getting banished by King Rohan when he finds out what she's been doing.
Yeah, she basically cheats.
Yeah.
And she gets banished, and that kind of leaves her for the finale.
Yeah.
And
what other kind of stuff? Oh, Ilian dies.
Yeah.
Who cares, man?
It was like he team up with Octavia before,
for a while they
briefly.
kind of started. He wanted to team up, but she was like, "I'm not teaming up with you." And then they end up teaming up, and then he ends up dying for her, which is like the only good thing he ever did as a character was that he ended up dying for Octavia, as in he saved her.
Also, notably, the Octavia's tactics were so realistic. Actually, in the big fight, was the whole thing was like Bellamy gave the most brilliant advice. It was like, do what you've done all the time, stay hidden and wait till it comes. Wait till you have no choice but to fight.
Yeah, like wait for your opportunity. She essentially
opportunity.
lets everyone kill each other, and then it eventually gets down to the final tree, and her and Rohan decide that the best thing they can do is team up and take down Luna together. And then they'll fight out between the two of them to see who gets it in the end. But what actually ends up happening is that Luna's too strong. She ends up drowning.
Well, Rohan weakens Luna.
Oh, he does, a lot. Like,
but it was
a lot.
What happened was the rain interrupted interrupted him, and Luna's now immune to the radiation because she already went through the whole effects process. So her feeling the rain doesn't matter to her, and basically she has the advantage in the terrain, and
she ends up drowning Rohan in a fountain.
Yeah.
That's actually what happens. Like, that was such because I love Rohan. Man, Rohan is one of my favorite characters in the show. So, like, for him to die like that, to get drowned in a fountain is kind of shit. But also, when you look at the context of what was happening, like the fight and stuff, and who he was fighting, it makes sense. Like, isn't for him to die like that.
And then Octavia gets lucky and kills them.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, Luna's basically badly injured because Rohan kicked the shit out of her. So then Octavia ends up overpowering Luna and killing her. Like, so she takes the bunker, and everyone in the 100, obviously, all the Sky people think, obviously, oh, she's fighting for us. But then she decides, no, I'm not fighting for you. I was fighting for all people, and we're going to share the bunker between the 13 clans.
People keep forgetting that Octavia was not a part of the Ark. Technically,
she's not. She
was
anymore.
Just hidden. She was never a part of the Ark. She was the one who was hidden under the floorboards. She was the one who got in jail when they found out she existed.
Yeah. But not only that, she was essentially adopted by the Grounders, and her surrogate mother is essentially Indra, who's a member of Tree Crew. So she's more Tree Crew than anything.
Yeah.
So she was never going to side with just the Sky
she had
people.
alliance. She felt aligned with most clans.
Yeah, pretty much, because to her it's like they're all her people.
Yeah.
So they end up sharing the bunker, which leads to the members of the Sky Crew. At one point, they seize the bunker for themselves, but they end up giving it up eventually. Because Bellamy talks Abby into letting him, or is it Clark? Well, Bellamy essentially opens the door to the bunker, and instead they're going to share it. So they have to pick their 100 people to share the bunker.
Yeah.
which kind of leads to a couple of tough decisions for Kane and especially Kane and Jah to make.
Yeah.
They become like real leaders in that situation, like of their people. Like
So that kind of leaves that part of the finale, though.
yeah,
then,
so we'll just kind of talk about the other storyline going on.
Basically, what happens is because there's a side story with Raven and her, like, basically her struggle because of how she lost Ali's, basically the influence Ali had in her basically affects her brain.
Mm-hmm.
And so she went through this whole thing of whether she wanted to go to space for the one last time or that, and then she was like, basically the better part of her convinced her to a better part in the form of what's his name?
I can't remember the guy's name.
Oh,
he's a character. We're not looking up his name. We're cool. We're fine. We don't.
Such a big character.
He's basically her mentor in the on
the arc, like.
Yeah.
But Sinclair.
Yeah.
Sinclair, yeah. Sinclair basically shows up and as her better part and convinces her to save herself. And then when she does go through that arc, the whole she decides to go back and go into the bunker, and Clark thinks Clark assembles a crew, and she thinks she's enough time to go and save him.
Yeah.
And John and his missus Amori.
Yeah.
They go off with them because Maury's expendable. No, that was the whole thing.
Yeah, that is. Yeah,
she was not
going to get a place.
She was not going to get a place in the bunker, and John was like, he was only counting on a raffle with that thing, so it wasn't a sure thing for either of them anyway. Just because when they left, it was like, Abigail was like, it's not. It's like, yeah, I'll try and get your name into, but I'm not really.
Mm-hmm.
If they help out, so basically, their mission was to go out and just hide in a bunker, for a few years, even though they didn't have that enough supplies.
Yeah.
Prepared, but they decided basically this power crew assembled for them to go up back to the Ark. There was one small station up on the Ark that they decided to fly back up to, and the whole thing was Clark got left behind.
Yeah, because she goes to climb a tower to like make sure that they get away, because she has to like turn off a jamming signal or something. And what actually ends up happening is that the tower ends up being a lot bigger than she thought. She has to climb to the top and she gets left behind. But she ends up surviving because she's immune to the side effects of the radiation, and she manages to get back into the bunker. That was
because she got the night blood cure, which we didn't really mention.
Yeah, she injects herself with the night blood at one point to see if it works, and it ends up working for her, but not as well for a normal night blood, but it still ends up saving her. Like, because she ends up getting back into, I think it's the lighthouse that John was in originally, wasn't it? Or was it the bunker that they were in when they went to space?
No, they didn't show her going back to anywhere. It was just she was on top of the radio tower when it was when the radiation.
Oh yeah,
was
no,
kicking
but
in.
she ends up getting back down and getting back into a bunker at the end of the season, though. She does, yeah. She gets back inside, but she gets burnt by the radiation when she's on the tower, but she ends up getting back inside.
So did Luna.
Oh no, exactly. Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying that she gets burnt, but she ends up getting back inside afterwards, and she's okay then. So that kind of leaves us off then at the end of season 4 with a lot of the Sky crew in the bunker, the ones that weren't killed, obviously, the ones that weren't outside.
New season as well.
Yeah, because the season ends off with Clark with a girl. Yeah. In this place, and she sees like this transport coming down from the sky, and at first she thinks that it's Bellamy and Raven and all them, but it turns out to be this prisoner.
Yeah, it's a prisoner ship. We don't really know anything from that episode, from watching that tease. So basically she gets cautious when she finds out that when she knows right away it's not Bellamy's ship.
Yeah. And that's kind of how the season ends up. We've already kind of done a discussion about the trailer for the 100 for this season. Like, do you want to do some predictions, or?
I think we'll just leave it off in there.
Yeah, I think we're okay. There's so many prediction stories. This is more just of a synopsis, just to get people back into the headspace of watching the 100.
Alright,
so we hope you enjoyed watching that.
So leave a like, subscribe, and leave a comment below if you feel like it. And share, of course. So that's Fish and Chips out. Thank you for watching.